It is time for us to check in with Tom Mulcair. Our feature brought to you by Guaranteed Industries. They're the folks who keep you nice and warm all winter long. So give them a call. Make sure your system is up to it. And remember, they service what they sell. That's Guaranteed Industries, a Lennox Premier dealer, 514-342-3400 or online, guaranteedindustries.com. So, Tom, we've been speculating now for the better part of a couple of weeks what the government would ultimately do as far as these planned tuition hikes. Well, the speculation is over. Today, I don't even know that it's fair to say out of the clear blue. It seems that way to the universities involved. The government has decided to go ahead, and we now know what they're going to do, and it's not good news.
It's not good news. So tuition will be doubled for people from out of province compared to what they would pay in their home province. If you're from BC and you can get into UBC, or Toronto and you can get into University of Toronto, those are two of the best universities in Canada, along with McGill. They're the top three. Nobody else is close. Well, then you're going to find out that you're going to pay twice what you pay in your home province, and you're going to say no to McGill. So in those provinces, you pay $6,000 and change as tuition. Here, it's going to be $12,000. So you're just going to be turning away all these great Canadian students, many of whom, by the way, have French, because, you know, if you're a high performer, the good chance is your parents probably put you in immersion. You love coming to McGill. You can live a little bit in French, and you can study in English. It's just a great offer. And, of course, it's not going to be there anymore. I think that the basic mistake that was made at the beginning by McGill, which is full of brilliant people with great ideas, but I think the basic mistake that they made is assuming they were dealing with somebody who was in good faith. You know, François Legault and especially Pascal Derry, they have not been in good faith in this thing. So go back to the spring. There's, first mutterings about this. The CAC was reelected 6 months earlier. We're going to have to do something about this. There's this constant repeating of something that doesn't become true by repeating it, that there's a grave mortal danger for the French language in Montreal, and we're just hearing too much English, which in and of itself is, of course, racist, but it's the thing that they kept pushing. So what happened was McGill, in utmost good faith, talked to its benefactors, looked at its budgets, and said, we're going to pony up $50 million, 50, $50 million. We're going to have a program. It's going to be over several years. We're going to up the ability to learn French and speak French for people coming to McGill. It's going to be a good experience for them, and it'll be good for Montreal, and it should quiet this sort of complaint. That's what somebody in good faith does. But, of course, they didn't realize that they were in a debate and a negotiation and a bargaining session with a barracuda. Legault wasn't bargaining. Legault was looking for something to have a fight with the English. After he got pummeled by the Parti Québécois in Jean Talon and Quebec City, the writing was on the wall. I spoke with Pascal Derry when she came out with the first version of this thing. Almost all of her facts were wrong. It was ill-intentioned, and it had zero to do, with saving French in Montreal, although that was what they would say. It had everything to do with picking a fight with the English and showing that Legault could have that fight just as well as the Parti Québécois. Fast forward, they kept negotiating with themselves. Oh, okay, you don't want that. Okay, we'll withdraw the $50 million. Oh, now you see, the English are bad guys. Look, they're withdrawing it. You don't put that on the table unless you already know you've negotiated something in return. But they were in good faith. They put it on the table. Then they withdrew it, and they looked bad. And then they came back and said, okay, we're going to do this. We'll accept this in terms of tuition increase, and we'll help with that. And in return, you're going to give us a break, and we'll up the French language ability of 40% of the people who come here. Of course, it's a one-way negotiation. Legault wasn't even answering them. He didn't even sit down and talk to them again. They kept re-upping their own offer into the void. And what happened today, as sad as it is predictable when you're negotiating without a mandate and you're talking with somebody who doesn't care. So Legault just pulled 80% out of thin air, which means that if you've got top flight students from other countries who don't have any French, then they're just going to give McGill a pass and go to University of Toronto or University of British Columbia and so forth. It's, the community has always talked about the importance of our institutions that were built by the community. And what Legault is saying is he doesn't care about that one bit. He's going to dismantle them one at a time.
I have a question, though, based on this decision, and you're right, and I think as insulting here, Tom, I don't know if you agree, is the fact that there has been no consultation between both sides. You're right. McGill was sitting and waiting. Concordia was sitting and waiting. The government said, yeah, we'll get to it. And it never happened, like so many other decisions this government has made. That consultation didn't happen. What happens now, or do you know, first of all, what sort of recourse do McGill and Concordia have, number one? And I don't understand, if you come here, even now, paying more, and this 80% rule is now in effect, and you don't reach 80%, what, do you not graduate?
No, it has nothing to do with the graduation. It'll have everything to do with McGill's money. or Concordia's money. So what they're saying is, if you don't do 80% and prove it to us, we'll remove the money that the Quebec government, because the Quebec government still gives a lot of money to McGill and Concordia like other universities. We're just going to remove your money. So you're talking about a strategy. I was saying it as kindly as I could, but I think it was pretty clear that nobody had a strategy when this thing started. They just sort of said, well, maybe, if we hold out our withered paw to the vivisectionists, they'll leave us alone. So what they did is they offered up the $50 million, then they withdrew it. That wasn't a strategy. So now they need a strategy, but they should also be reaching out, and they're not doing it. There are top-notch people at McGill on the staff, top-notch people at McGill on the board, et cetera, but they're not reaching out to the community. They're not reaching out to the McGill grads. They're not helping themselves by talking to the English-speaking community, and a lot of people there who would love nothing more than to be brought in and to help. And so now they need a legal strategy. They don't have one. This should go straight to the courts. If Trudeau was even paying vague attention to this, he would move in, and the federal government has tons of authority, funding, research grants, and so forth. Should be paying a lot of attention to this, because this is outrageous in terms of a direct frontal attack on the English-speaking community of Quebec and its institutions. And Trudeau, who claims to care a great deal about official language communities in the country and how we behave with each other and how we treat each other, he should be paying a little bit of attention.
Are you expecting he will?
That was my question, like with the role of the federal government in this and what happens next on that front.
Well, it's so interesting to watch, because obviously let's take the Bloc Québécois out of the equation. They're just going to be applauding this. Let's look at the NDP. I don't see Alexandre Boulris shedding any tears for Miguel. He's supposed to be their Quebec guy. They have one Quebec guy, and he's not going to be, sharing an opinion that would be much different from that of the Bloc on this particular issue. So who else have we got? Well, we've got the Conservatives. They're going to do everything they can to curry favor with Legault, the same way Legault backed Aaron O'Toole in the last campaign. Poilievre's on bended knee hoping for the same thing, and he doesn't know anything about the language file in Quebec. Let's not kid ourselves. And the few members of Parliament that he has on his team don't know anything about the English-speaking community of Quebec. So they're not going to be any help. So the only diversity there in Ottawa is through the Liberal Party that brought in the Official Languages Act just over 50 years ago, and of course should be paying great attention to this. But good luck. Why don't you try calling the half a dozen or so Anglophones in the federal Liberal caucus and see what kind of reaction you get. They're the same ones who hid under their desks when Anthony Housefather was the only one who courageously voted against Bill C-13.
Okay.
The other thing I think just bears mentioning in this conversation is that Bishops has been granted an exemption, and they seemingly were the only university who was able to actually sit down and have actual negotiations and consultations with them. I mean, obviously that saves
and good on them.
Bishops.
Big high five to Bishops. Very well done. So yes, they're going to keep their tuitions where they are. At the same time, Pascal Derry went to Bishops during the 2022 election campaign in the summer, just before she became a candidate, and she gave this warm and fuzzy, glowing speech about both languages and bringing people in. And this is the same Pascal Derry who's doing this hatchet job. By the way, this is worth mentioning, because I actually made this prediction to a close colleague who's been working on these files like me for decades. I said, they will not let her go in front of the cameras anymore. They're just going to put out a written press release. He says, no, she's a minister. She's going to have to go and explain. I said, no. They won't let her speak in front of the cameras anymore. And sure enough, there was this bizarre piece of paper that floated out and just reiterating this thing. But where's the actual cabinet decision? Where's the order in council? Where are the details of this thing? It's a letter. It's a letter, the same way that McGill sent out, we'll have $50 million, we'll spend it, and that should get you off our backs. Not so much. And then this is like, here's a bunch of stuff that you're going to do. By the way, the provincial government has absolutely zero jurisdiction over the curriculum and the syllabus and what goes into, getting and granting a degree. So you can just imagine where this is coming from. Where are allies in the universities? Well, guess what? The French universities are not going to step up and try to help McGill. Although, much to his credit, Rector Jutra of l'Université de Montréal did go on French television, Radio Can, with Deep Saini, the new principal of McGill, and did his best to try to explain this stuff. And he was very good and very helpful. So, it's not true that none of them will do anything, but basically they're just sort of going, okay, more stuff for us, you're on your own. The other English universities across the country, well, there's a big association, so they're obviously going to move forward, right, and denounce this? Not so much, because McGill has been a magnet for top students from across Canada, because it's a cool city to live in and to study in, and you do attract some of the top people. And now the U of T and UBC and the others are just going to say, so sorry to hear about what's happening to you. We've got a couple of thousand great new students that you would have otherwise had. So it's a real mess. There are no allies right now for the community generally. We don't have any structure. We don't have an Alliance Quebec anymore as we once did. We've got great people like Eric Maldoff, who once headed up Alliance Quebec, but we don't have the structure itself anymore.
It will be very interesting to see, because I think we can all agree, or Tom, I'm asking you, this is not officially over, is it? I mean, the university is going to have to react one way or the other.
They have to go to the courts.
Okay.
Because they're, I can rhyme off a half a dozen things that you can attack in this decision, and it's obviously going to be going to the courts.
That is it for us, and I understand that is it for you, Tom. You're going to be on your Christmas break, so we want to wish you all the best for the holiday season.
All the best to you and your families for the holidays. Great working with you.
We'll talk to you in a few weeks.
All the best to you and yours too, Tom. Thank you.